Welcome. The topic of our formal debate will be, should a free and appropriate public education, FAPE, include mandatory ABA services for children and youth with ASD in schools? My name is Suzanne, and I will be the moderator of the debate as well as the pro supporter. Cassie?
Hi, I'm Cassie, and I'm on the pro side.
Crystal?
Hi, I'm Crystal, and I'm on the con side.
The mandate included in the Education for All Handicapped Children Act in 1975 provided children with disabilities access to a free and appropriate public education, FAPE. It established a system equipped with specialized instructional methods and techniques which are delivered by teachers with special knowledge and skills that meet the individual needs of the exceptional population. When examining the school and post-secondary challenges children and youth with ASD continue to experience, it may be appropriate to ask, what is so special about special education? Today, parents, advocates, and those with ASD themselves, with the client's rights litigations at their backs, have begun to fight for access to evidence-based specialized behavioral treatments and interventions delivered by certified behavior analysis. This can become complicated given the substantial cost of ABA services, considering that the public school systems are already strapped with limited resources and rapidly increasing population of children and youth. And as we go through our debate, the order that we're going to follow is going to be, we're first going to discuss potential roles of BCBA plays as collaborative partners. Then we'll be talking about proper training for teachers. And then we'll be talking about the pro and cons of special education services, including eligibility, supports, outcomes for children with ASD. Then we'll be talking about the ABA costs can be very high. And then both the pro and the con will discuss the ethical dilemmas that there are with ABA being included in schools. And with that saying, we'll start our first part with Cassie. Go ahead, Cassie.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the potential roles BCBAs play as collaborative partners and what their duties to do so are. BCBAs help to implement ABA principles in the schools. They give support to their teachers and other professionals they come into contact with. They help advise and provide behavior plans for children who need it. They help train teachers and other staff in the appropriate and most successful way of dealing with certain behaviors. They provide step-by-step plans that will increase the learning atmosphere for that of the client, the other children in the class, as well as the teacher. Many school employees are not trained properly in how to deal with certain behaviors, putting children in dangerous physical holds when they are not needed and handling behaviors in the wrong way. This is all because of lack of training and improper training. BCBAs can help with these issues. They can train teachers the proper way of dealing with certain behaviors and teach them certain aspects of ABA that would be helpful to use in their classrooms. Not only would this help the dynamics of the classroom and improve the learning capabilities of the students, it would also help protect the teachers and employees of lawsuits against them for using improper physical restraints or treatments. If the BCBAs are allowed to come in and teach the proper way of handling these situations, lawsuits from parents and family members would go down drastically. NPR News investigation said that abuse and improper use of restraints is a big topic in the school systems. Restraints should be used as a last resort in all situations. When people are not trained properly in implementing restraints, many bad things can happen to the child, even death. To prevent this from happening, BCBAs could come in and train the staff. A statistic for you, from 2011 to 2012 school year, restraints and seclusions were used at least 267,000 times, these cases being with children with disabilities. And as you can see, that's a really big number and a lot of these restraints and seclusions could be prevented by using other ABA techniques.
And Crystal?
I agree that teachers are not properly trained to deal with the behaviors that ASD children can display. I can only imagine how hard it is already to maintain a classroom of 20 plus students along with the special education students being mainstreamed into the classroom. Clinics are already collaborating with the schools and attending with the students during class to collect data and assist with any kind of behavior issues. Why should we take this skill away from the professionally trained staff, which is medically covered by services for most insurance, and place in the hands of teachers that are already spread too thin?
And Kathy?
Yeah, I agree with that. Teachers are in need. But that would definitely be something that the BCBAs or even the behavioral technicians could come in and be more hands-on for the teachers in the classroom.
To support, BCBAs can help with knowing the antecedents and the functions of the behavior to help prevent the use of strengths. But having been a teacher in kindergarten for 10 years, I do have some of the information and the background to give me a foundation on the ABA skills. As I am taking classes, the information or techniques of ABA I see have been used in classrooms. A teacher might use different vocabulary to explain a technique, but many of the techniques are the same or familiar. For example, positive and negative reinforcements, positive and negative punishments, graphing data. Usually teachers graph more about academic behaviors, collecting data, again, more on the academic side. But I collected data 2 to 3 times a week, and sometimes daily, writing and implementing operational definitions and interventions. I had students on daily behavior programs that was broken down into intervals, looking at 2 to 3 individual objectives of a behavior throughout the day. Special education teachers even have more skills related to ABA by running FBAs, collecting baseline data, interviews with parents, collecting and graphing data, and generalizations. And Crystal?
With inclusion, also known as mainstreaming, in play in today's classroom, we have regular education teachers instructing special education students. Many of these educators lack training to properly educate our students with special needs, and the children aren't receiving the best education they deserve. It's unlikely that with the implementation of ABA services that public school systems will ensure the proper training for this, as well as if there is some type of plan devised, even follow up for effectiveness, that will be difficult. According to Berry, Patron, Gravel, and Farmer in 2011, there were 1/3 of special education educators that stated they felt as if they were providing teaching services, in which they were not qualified to teach, and they felt as if their preparation was lacking to educate certain special needs students.
Kathy?
Again, I can understand that. Again, it comes back to what the BCBAs and behavioral technicians can do for those teachers. They can provide them with the plans that would make it easier for them in the classroom. They can also be there as a support if they would need other help, and train the other teacher helpers in the classroom to provide these certain services. So training's obviously lacking in the schools, but when it comes to working with children who are, working with autism, oh my gosh, training is obviously lacking in schools when it comes to working with children who are autistic. The teachers have no background in ABA, or maybe they've taken a few classes here and there. So what if special education teachers were required to take classes in ABA? This would provide them with a background in the field, and they would be able to make better decisions on how to treat certain behaviors. They could do rotations, and you get a feel for the types of treatments that are being used also. According to psychologist Ivar Lopez, that children receiving 40 hours per week of ABA services were able to complete first grade, while children receiving 10 hours per week did not. Of ABA services, the more the children are going to have in school. The National Standards Project states that in schools, ABA has been a great success in classrooms. Over the past 20 years, ABA has been established as a powerful source of interventions for education systems. ABA has consistently been effective in assisting individuals with autism in achieving meaningful progress. I am also going to talk about the pros and cons of special education services. In exceptional children and in order to be eligible for special education services, the child must be labeled as having a disability. But IDEA says that children ages 3 to 9 are able to receive services without using a specific label. Labeling someone into a category is never taken kindly. We all have gone through this as we have grown up, and we have realized that being put into group is stigmatizing, and it may lead to bullying or other types of abuse down the line. This may also make it hard for the child to be accepted by his or her peers when put into a mainstream classroom. There are many positives and negatives to labeling an individual. Some of the positives are that it helps professionals evaluate and do research. It helps promote their specific disability, and it may teach other children that it's okay to be different. There are also many negatives that directly affect a child's life. People may label they may not be able to do certain things. It may also lead to bullying or rejection by their typical peers. By having this label, they may never be seen as just another kid again. Now going to bring up a visual aid, and this is from the Global Post in the article Outcomes of Behavioral Interventions for Children with Autism in Mainstream Preschool Settings, that after 2 years, children receiving behavioral interventions had higher IQ scores as well as adaptive behavior composite scores than that of children receiving normal schooling. So I know this is a little bit small. You guys can see the bar graph and how it goes drastically up. The first graph left is the early intensive behavioral intervention. And then the one on the right is the comparison group. So that would be the group that's 5 hours a week treatment as usual. On the first graphs, the top graphs, the IQ is the first graph, and then you see change, which is like the communication and daily living skills. So the 2 years in treatment, there were the high in both the IQ and ABC for the early intensive behavioral intervention. So that just proves that the more the better. the scores will be for that. And then my next picture or information. So this is just kind of a little bit more on the graph, but it just gives you some numbers. I'm not sure how well you can see the numbers, but what they're taking is the intellectual functioning, the Vineland adaptive behavior scales, the adaptive behavior composite scores, communication, daily living skills, and socialization. So for early intensive behavioral intervention, the scores were up in the 50s and 60s. Years, they jumped up to being in the mid 60s, high 70s, which made the mean score. They got really good scores. 15, 5.9, 8.6, 2.1, 5.8 for those certain skills. And then for the comparison group, they also started, at the same scores. And then after 2 years, they were around the same range as they started. And so their mean scores were only 0.5, 0.7. Some of them, the daily living skills and socialization actually decreased by 1.6 and 2.3. So with that, you can see how important early intensive behavior intervention is, and the more ABA services, the better.
And Crystal?
I agree labeling a child can cause them to be socially rejected and even gain a bully. In the clinical setting, however, many children with ASD are around other children with ASD and taught to socially interact with each other, giving them skills they need to be more successful and at socializing in the schools. In ABA, we're able to push those boundaries. ASD children are labeled with and go beyond what public schools who label them in a category may have expected. Some ASD children are kicked out of schools because of these labels, bad behavior, distraction of others, etc. And ABA clinics are the parents' only and last hope. What if insurance to see that schools are funding this and cut out ABA medical programs altogether, causing the lower functioning students less services and, in a one-on-one setting with social opportunities for these children with children like them, and more time in schools being labeled? Is that really better for them overall?
Well, no. I mean, it's not. Obviously, lower functioning individuals, we would want to have more ABA services. What do you think, Susie?
Yes. Clinics can provide many one-on-one assistance with ABA techniques. They help children with social interactions, but one area they lack are peer modeling. The adult ABA therapist can model this, prompt other autistic children at the clinic to respond. The normal social interaction does not involve adults helping with prompting. If a child is integrated into a classroom, they would have a peer models showing a normal response to other peers, teachers, and actions. Many children need a procedure or demonstration on how to have a social interaction, which could be provided by the clinic. It also could be provided by the special education teacher or associate. Stephanie Token and Raymond Millenberg increased independence among children diagnosed with autism using a brief embedded teaching strategy. The study showed 2 paraprofessionals and 2 students needing to gain more independence. The study involved a 10-minute training in the morning every time a new behavior or task was taught. It showed this little amount of time allowed for huge growth from both the students and the paraprofessionals. This type of procedure could be used all the time to help provide more training for paraprofessionals in any situation to help the individual student work towards meeting their goals. The more the peer is involved, peer modeling is involved can demonstrate how to respond appropriately. It can also help with generalization to a more natural environment. Mainstreaming helps peers at a young age understand how to accept all children. Most of all, I have seen these skills implemented and done with both of my daughters. It is so exciting for a parent to know that your child is making connections at school through a simple social skill, or to see the skills being generalized into other areas. I have also been asked many times from both the clinic and school, where did she learn those skills? I tell them from her peers, even though she doesn't seem to be paying attention. I have seen her start building blocks that she had seen her brother doing a few days before without any indication that she was paying attention. She had been building towers by the next day all the time. She never sat down and played with him during this time. So she seemed to be doing her own thing the whole time, but she had picked up on what had been going on and was able to build towers just by peer modeling. And it's back, I think, to Cassie, right?
Let's see. No, the ABA costs can be expensive. We're going to put up a graph right now, a table, I'm sorry, about cost to think about per year when it comes to adding ABA.
Coming, 1 second. Still on Cassie's stuff. And there is our graph.
That would be the pie chart. Can we get the graph up?
Thank you.
That's coming next. Okay. Okay, so the cost of ABA services can be very expensive. With the BACB requirements of the supervision of staff delivering ABA services, as well as the limits of how much supervision a BCBA can actually perform, funding for ABA services will be very high. Where will this funding come from? Will the cost cause the school systems to only hire just enough staff to get by, causing large client loads and in turn causing a less effective educational experience for those children with ASD? Schools are already having a difficult time funding the special education programs now, much less adding the cost of highly paid ABA professionals. Barry, Petrin, Gravel, and Farmer in 2011 stated, for some rural districts, it's more feasible to fund the provision of services in the general education classroom rather than fund separate settings and additional staff. As you can see here on this this table, each student right now, as it is, costs $12,401 a year, which was in total of all students $621 billion. Now, adding ABA services, as you can see, for just the BCBA, like the assessment and all that, it's $46,000 to $47,500 a year. And the clinical or at-home services, you know, the line therapy and all that, is like $15,000 a year. So that's an additional $61,000 to $62,500 on top of this $12,000 per, you know, ASD student. So now we're going to go to the pie chart, where you can see where the funding is actually coming from right now for each student. Let's see, according to datafirst.org 2016, this was for 2012 actually. On the local level, it was about, it says 45 here, which is a rounded off 44.8. The state was 45.1, which rounds off again to 45, and federal was 10.1 or 10%. This leads me to think that taxes will have to be raised pretty dramatically on the local and the state level to compensate the cost.
Yes, Cost of ABA services is definitely high, but they will be provided under the IEP. IDEA is a law that requires states to receive certain federal funding to provide an FAPE for children between the ages of 3 to 21 or until they graduate or get their GED. In order to receive services under IDEA, a child must fit under the category of autism and that the disability has an adverse effect on their educational progress or performance. The parents may require the schools to provide ABA services to the child. They can do this by providing facts that show these services will benefit the child and will help him or her succeed or progress in their education. IDEA guarantees all school-age children with learning disabilities a free and appropriate public education, extending this also to preschool children. It requires school districts to drop an individualized education program, or IEP, for every child in special education. The parents, school administrators, and teachers meet to discuss what the students' educational goals are and the other services that the school district will pay for. According to PBS.org, 93% of the funding comes from state and local governments. And the sources of these funds are sales and income tax along with property tax. So yes, I believe that, you know, the taxes will probably have to increase due to the funding. But then again, it's worth it. You know, our kids' education, the money spent to give them, you know, all the opportunities in the world that they need to learn and grow is I think, other people may think differently. It's definitely worth the money. It's worth, you know, every penny spent to get these children to where they need to be to live and grow independently. So.
Medicaid pays for behavioral services and speech in school settings with students that have an autism diagnosis. They are billed under behavioral codes. At a clinic, similar billing is done through ABA services, which is a behavior. This could vary from state to state, but many area education services have BCBAs, which are paid from the same agency that provides speech, OT, and other etc. therapies for students. After looking through the Medicaid School-Based Administration Claiming Guide, it goes over different services for which you can bill. For example, providing a personal aid services, providing speech, occupational, physical or other therapies, providing direct clinical treatment services. These are all things that could be billed through the child's insurance. Then the school is not responsible for the cost of the services. It provides even mental health services that have been written into an IEP. It also includes many other items listed that could be paid through Medicaid. This shows that the schools would not be responsible for paying for these services. And now we're going to talk about the pro-ethical dilemmas with Cassie. Go ahead, Cassie. Cassie? I think we lost her, Crystal, for a second. Just having some technical difficulties. Hopefully she'll be back in a second to talk about pro-ethical dilemmas. Oh. Cassie?
Can you
Cassie?
guys hear?
Yes.
We can hear you now.
Okay. So, sorry about that.
No big deal.
So ethical dilemmas facing inclusion of students, under teachers and legal liabilities by accepting a child with disabilities into their classroom. They are accepting responsibility for a higher standard of care. They received a typical student teacher child into her classroom if they are not going to be able to take on the responsibility, which could in turn lead him or her into legal issues down the road. Another ethical dilemma is many teachers do not receive proper training, which we had talked about when it comes to having a full inclusive classroom. The teacher in the class doesn't have the proper training. How are they going to provide the right treatment? And the BCBA could come in, or the behavioral technician could come in and help with that training. Another ethical dilemma is if a child is aggressive, is to be in a class which is unaware. I believe this rehabilitation team can help. The BCBAs, BCABAs, and behavioral technicians can be a part of the inclusion team to help keep the teachers safe. Special educators have to decide instruction separate from their typical peers, exclusion, or if they should be in the same classroom as their peers receiving assistance, which is inclusion. Another ethical issue is how the children in a special education class are being treated. Are they being treated the same as those without disabilities, or are they being treated differently? Another major ethical issue is if the services provided for these individuals in schools are making them overly reliant on help. After high school, they are not guaranteed services, so are these individuals to where they may be reliant on individual help the rest of their lives.
And to Crystal with the cons on ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, along with the previous problems that were mentioned, there will be considerable ethical dilemmas facing BCPAs along with ABA staff because of the possibility of skeleton crews and low funding, not to mention denying the clients their right to an effective treatment. Let's see, from the board site, the 2.09 is the treatment and intervention efficacy. Clients have a right to an effective treatment. 5.02 is supervisory volume. Behavior analysts take on only a volume of supervisory activity that is commensurate with ability to be effective, which I personally witnessed this, working in the clinic setting. They spend a great deal of time providing supervision. So yeah, that would be an ethical dilemma as well.
Yeah, and to back up the 5.02 supervisory volume, the behavioral analysts are not able to take on more than they can handle. This would be a great opportunity to get other BCBAs in on the action. There are plenty of ABA clinics and BCBAs that would be able to provide the services needed in the schools. The more awareness that autism gains, the more services we will be able to provide. The number of children on a BCBA's caseload depends on the complexity of the cases. The good thing about ABA services is that there is a tiered system. Under the BCBAs, there are BCABAs, behavioral technicians that are more than capable of training teachers and making sure they're implementing the programs properly.
And
Individual, oh, go ahead.
No, go, Cassie.
The Individuals with Disability Act, or IDS, supports inclusive practices by requiring that to the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities, including children in public or private institutions or other care facilities, are educated with children that are non-disabled, and that special classes, separate schooling, or other removal of children with disabilities from the regular education classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. So what this is saying is, children with disabilities should have that opportunity to go in to regular classrooms with typical peers so that they're able to learn with and gain the knowledge from the classroom.
And now with that being said, let's put it to a vote, our conclusions. We'll start with Cassie and then Crystal. Cassie?
Okay, so obviously I'm pro. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm about providing ABA services in school. I'm a behavioral technician, so I am very strong about ABA services, that it's really to provide these children and is for ABA services.
And Crystal?
I agree with Cassie. I'm going to change over sides because I do have a 15-year-old with autism, and it would have been very nice to see ABA in school to teach her how to deal socially with her fellow classmates. I do agree that there is concern as far as skeleton crews and if they can give her the right amount of treatment, but hey, if they can do it, I'm all for it.
And with that being said, I'm going to show you our last visual. Second. As you can see here, we put out the positives and the negatives. And you can see the positives are a lot longer than negatives. The positives talk about the outcome for children with ASD. BCBAs can advise and provide behavioral plans. They can provide supervision, support, and train teachers and staff. Special education teachers required to take a class in ABA means more knowledge to help the children with ASD. Costs can be paid through insurances. IDEA is guaranteed already. Help bridge the gap between schools and clinics. The negatives we said were the ethical codes 5.02 and 2.09, and then adding more to a teacher's plate. Obviously, teachers are very busy, and adding more training may take away from their other planning. But if you go back to the positive side, it may actually give them more planning to have the skills to work with children with autism and planning behavior supports for them. Another negative would be the lack of training for teachers with ASD. And finally was the cost we put on the negative, but also can be put on the positive because that should be able to be paid through the child's insurance. In conclusion, my stance is strong. Oh, hold on one second. Stop my lovely slide. In conclusion, my stance is a strong pro for having ABA implemented into a school setting. It would be nice to see more collaboration between schools and clinics. I know my clinic has a monthly meeting in which they have discussions with the team and the BCBAs on different goals and concerns. It would be great if schools could be included in these meetings. If unable to attend, maybe having them taped so they can give feedback and ask questions, share their concerns and positive moments. This will be a great way to increase the collaboration between schools and clinics. It would help with more generalization in different settings and environments. And I think it would be a good start. I think it would be good to start small and slowly add more ABA into the school settings. This would allow the teachers and the staff to really understand the procedures and techniques. The 10-minute training a couple times a week when a new task is being learned for individuals would be a great way to not overwhelm the teachers and the paraprofessionals. With that being said, I'd like to thank you for watching our debate, and we are all pro in having ABA implemented into the schools.